What's up, Guardians? This is Rayuka here doing my Destiny Year 1 review. Well, there's a lot to talk about, but by now, you guys already know the Taken King's release, and that's a whole different story for a whole nother time. But this review is going to be solely based on my experience with Destiny from Alpha all the way until, well, what you see here. Not counting the new update or whatever, the Taken King is, that's all totally separate. That's all year 2 stuff, and that's gonna be totally irrelevant in this review, at least to me, because I'm not bringing none of that stuff up. So here I'll be talking about the Dark Below, House of Wolves, and all the, well, try to catch all the updates, or at least talk about the things that I've noticed. So if I missed out anything, I apologize in advance, but I don't think I'm gonna catch all the stuff in this review anyway. So what I want to talk about is what was in year 1. As you can see, this was the map layout, and then you have, see, Dark Below, House of Wolves, and with each update always came buffs and nerfs. Now before I even get into that, because then I'm getting into other things, I want to talk about the alpha. The alpha was a unique experience when it was first released. It was like a limited release, but it was on PlayStation, and certain people got to experience it. And then you had the beta, which if you pre-ordered Destiny at the time, everyone had access to the beta no matter what platform you had it on, and you got to experience the beta. Not much was too different between the alpha and beta, besides the fact that there was a little bit more in the beta. Then you had the initial game release of Destiny. And to me, the problems with Destiny, at least when it came out, was one, Destiny, it was known a lot for its grinding. There was a lot of grinding going on in Destiny. I mean, people will just grind for legendaries, or they'll be for hours in a certain spot farming. And the farming stuff, at least to me, came later on. I did not know about it in the beginning. And when I say came later on, what I mean by that is I didn't even farm. I didn't even know about it until like people started mentioning it, and then Bungie patched it. And there was a certain spot on Earth that they patched. I believe it was Skywatch, but don't hold me on it. But that's my guess. But I think I'm wrong. I don't know if it was Skywatch, but it was a certain area on Earth, and in the cave, they put the remains of one of the hive. And when you click on it, it pretty much came out with wording and whatnot, talking about one of the characters in the game, etc. Basically, you couldn't farm there no more. And then they just changed it up here and there. Then you have multiplayer. Multiplayer has evolved a lot since day 1 of Destiny. I mean, they always added new modes, and with each DLC, there was always something new to see in there. From, well, obviously you had Clash and Control from the get-go, but then they added stuff like Savage and things like that. I keep calling it Savage. I don't know. Salvage, I believe. Excuse me, Salvage. But yeah. Besides that, you also have a lot of other things, such as the bounty system, which basically you get bounties for Crucible, which is the multiplayer, and bounties for the campaign, which you could team up with friends, or if you want to lone wolf it and just do whatever you want to do. And when you complete these bounties, you turn them in, you get experience, and you get Vanguard marks and Crucible marks at the time. So there was a lot of changes from one thing into another. But yeah. So then you have raids. Raids are where you team up with a group of friends. You go in, let's say for instance, Vault of Glass, which is one of the raids in the game, and then you beat the raid if you successfully get through it, and you get rewarded with weapons, armor, or materials, or things for your character to use. A part of the many mechanics in Destiny, as you can see here, you also have such as subclasses, weapon classes. I mean, there's just a lot going on in Destiny. You got things you could add to your character, all these things that are proved over time. But then Destiny, story-wise, to me anyway, had loopholes in its story. Now, there was a lot going on with the story in Destiny, but at the same time there wasn't. The way I took the story was you fight the darkness, you try to beat the darkness, and that's pretty much it. And to me, it just didn't explain enough. Like, maybe it's just me, but I'm a story person, so Destiny story wise, for you to get a grasp of what's going on in Destiny, you have to read these things called grimoires, which is in the Destiny amp. So you had to go on the amp, then you had to hope that you unlock most of these grimoires, and then you had to read on the enemies, or you wanted to read on the bosses, or what happened in the world, or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of reading involved. And I know there's people out there that don't like the grimoires. There's some people out there that just don't like going to download the amp and reading all this stuff. So it was hit and miss with the grimoire system. For me, it sort of bothered me and sort of didn't, because it was like, it's whatever. But I felt like all that stuff they could have added in the game. At least added a system where you have the grimoire in the game, and then you click on it, and then someone is reading out the grimoire to the player. Or just have the grimoire system in the game and you could just read it without having an audio play and read it out for you. Bring you more into the story. Also, you have a character here called the Agent of Nine. He comes around every weekend. He usually has something good, or he might not have nothing good at all, depending on what you're looking for. And one of the bigger things was the Galahorn. But before I talk about the Galahorn, let me talk about the weapons in Destiny. Destiny Year 1, the weapons clearly had a lot of dilemmas. And much of those had to do with the beginning, which was the Vex Mythal class saga, as I called it. In the beginning, people will beat the Vault of Glass, some people had the Vex Mythal class, and people will constantly complain about how strong that weapon is. And the Vex is still a strong weapon, truth be told. But then you also have weapons like the Soros, and the Thorn, and the Hawkmoon, and the list goes on, and the Galahorn was one of the recent ones being complained about so much. Now, my view of it is that when it comes to the weapons being overpowered or whatever, it makes sense for campaign, because you're going to go up against these strong bosses that are going to really give you a challenge. And then you have multiplayer. And in multiplayer, when you bring the weapons from campaign into multiplayer, what you have is unbalanced issues. And the reason why I believe this is because these weapons were mainly made for campaign, because you're going to go up against challenging bosses, especially in raids and whatnot. But when you bring these same weapons from campaign over the multiplayer, it makes things unbalanced. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think Destiny, at least for now, no matter how much expansions they release or whatnot, is going to be perfectly balanced. I think Bungie's always going to have issues balancing these weapons for multiplayer, because then you have the whole thing with campaign factoring in. But however they decide to work with that, until they just, whenever Destiny 2 releases in the future, I believe it's going to be a different story from here to there, but only time will tell. But to me, multiplayer will always remain broken. That's just me. I don't think it's ever going to be technically fixed. I think it'll be fixed enough for everyone to enjoy, but I still believe that there's always going to be the weapon that's going to make that one player stronger than the average. But then yet again, it's also based on skill level too. I mean, if you're good with what you have, and you can have a crappy weapon, then you're good at it. So sometimes it's not really the weapon, it's usually the player too. So you gotta factor in some of these things, but that's my view of multiplayer. So to wrap this up, there's been a lot of things going on with Destiny, such as story problems until multiplayer problems. I mean, the list goes on, but my experience with Destiny, at least for year one, has been somewhat mixed. I like it, and then there's times when I dislike it, but Destiny keeps me coming back. And if a game could do that, it's doing something right. I put a lot of hours into this game, and I could say that, yeah, I do like Destiny, clearly, because I keep playing it. But to me, Destiny gets a 7 out of 10. And there's a lot of things going on with Destiny that you may like or you may dislike, but in the end of the day, it is a game that will keep you coming back for more. And there's always something to do. And it's definitely fun to play with friends too. I mean, there's always something going on. Either someone's throwing someone off the ledge in the reef or in the tower, or there's something pointless going on. So anyway, Guardians, until next time, this is Rayuka here saying, sayonara.